tell us who you are and who you represent.
Right. Pete Brosnan, I am the Senior Vice President of Hollywood Locations. We manage the Avenue Scott stages. I'm also a managing partner of Los Angeles Center Studios, downtown LA.
I'm Karen Bryden from SCV Locations, and we represent multiple properties throughout Santa Clarita.
I'm Evan Thomason with the City of Santa Clarita. I'm an Economic Development Associate there, but I oversee the film office and tourism as well.
Steve Arkland. I own and operate Rancho Deluxe Filming Studios along with my son, Steve Jr.
And I'm Patrick Mullen, the editor of the Santa Clarita Valley Business Journal, which 4 years ago did a similar roundtable discussion, and the first topic of conversation at that point was California in danger of losing the film industry? And at the time, there was serious concern that it was. What has changed since? And we'll start with Pete.
Well, 4 years ago, we were in dire straits. The other states and even international countries, entities were all luring the film industry away in a massive fashion. The tax incentives, I remember, to go back even further than that, when we completed our stages downtown, we heard about everybody going to Canada. It was like, Canada? Why are they going to Canada? And it was, again, because of the tax incentives, cheaper labor, and the strength of the dollar. We, again, were lucky enough to weather those tough times. And really, I think it was 2 years ago, right, guys, that the state of California finally passed a more aggressive tax plan that was more on par of what the other states were offering.
So the film credit program.
Absolutely. So it finally gave the producers a chance to reflect and say, okay, I don't have to just, knee-jerk reaction, say, where are we going out of town? It now became California became a serious contender again as a location. So that's the main thing that's changed. In addition, the expansion of Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Google, YouTube, all the other entities more online related that have jumped into content production. So you really have, I think, those two main things. Would you agree, guys, that
Absolutely, yes.
have helped, both what governmentally the state was willing to do and then just the explosion of content production?
Karen, anything to add to that?
I do actually, and I think that a perfect example of what Pete was saying that is an absolute result that we can physically see now is because of the expansion of the California film credits and actually competing in that market. Just this year, for the first time, we've started hearing again about a California location expo only. And in the past, we had one. We lost so much business within Southern California that it didn't make sense anymore. And the conventions that we did have turned into conventions for everyone else around the world to come here to pitch, to take our business from us.
Yeah.
And finally this year, it started a little bit last year, but this year I really saw a big shift and change of people not only going to how do I leave, but what can I find now here at home to stay. So that's a big shift.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We've seen an uptick in, as Karen mentioned, when we go to Film in California conference. I mean, there's a buzz going around, I think, in the film community. It's almost a renaissance type of feel because it was so desperate before. And, we've seen it in Santa Clarita firsthand with, many shows that were approved for the California Film Incentive Program, coming here, some from Canada and from Florida. Most recently, Ballers has, moved to Los Angeles. So
They lost a credit in Florida.
Correct.
Almost immediately headed out here and got credit out here.
And it's, the California Film Commission has great numbers, and I can't cite them all, but on direct dollar-to-dollar spending. So every dollar that they spend, how much revenue is coming in the state of California. But I think that the state has really come together as a community, embraced this return of filming.
Are you seeing the benefit of the film credit program?
Hugely. It's since it was introduced originally, we've been increasing every year, and I believe that this probably is the best year we've had. I mean, just one day last week we had over 1,000 people filming on our ranch with 3 shows going, one show prepping, one show staging, and one show filming. So they were, and the interest
with no crowd scenes. 1,000 people working as members of crews. Wow.
Yes. and very happy to have a job in California and not having to leave the state and not having to leave their families, which that was the big deal. And then the hidden benefit that I think a lot of people didn't know was that movie ranches were not included in the incentive program originally. And that after we met with the legislature and had some serious conversations, they then introduced movie ranches into the film credits. And then after that, they stopped even going to New Orleans or Canada just because they couldn't get the credits on these movie ranches, and now they can.
And so another change in the credit program was, I think they changed the range of the budget of production that could be included to include the bigger
Correct.
budget things like A Wrinkle in Time. Are there any other changes you'd like to see in the program?
Definitely. I mean, what I believe and what I think that they didn't understand was they should give more incentive to the state of California for filming, because it really costs them nothing. They just make income from it. So, I mean, I don't know even why there's a cap to it. It just, because it's with the what it's the number 330 million or something they give it, just it turned the whole thing around. But it also turned this whole vibe around that now people are coming here even if they don't get the credits, because the stars are here, production's here, the equipment's here. So I mean, it was huge. If they doubled it, what if filming doubled in the state of California?
Any other ways you'd like to see it change?
I went to lunch with a couple producers a couple weeks ago, and they expressed that it's still kind of complicated. The amount of paperwork, the application process, almost immediately when a show goes into production and qualifies for the incentive, they have to have a consultant come in at least on a monthly basis and make sure that everything is being done properly. If they're, I think, more than 3% or 4% off of what they've estimated as the spend, there's a huge penalty. So it's still a bit laborious, I think, on the administrative side. And again, as we try and compete with the other states, that's got to be taken into consideration, because you'll hear that all the time. Well, it's a lot easier to get this all through in Georgia or Chicago, my hometown, which is popping right now. So I think we need to maybe streamline, but we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I just think it's the thing that we've seen in the last few years is them changing it and them being cognizant of, let's not just put something in place and keep it that way. As Steve mentioned, the movie ranches are now eligible for that. So I think it's important to focus on seeing what works and what can be improved on, and that seems to be what they're doing, as it's progressively, I think, gotten better.
Anything else, Karen?
I would love to see them consider increasing or adding something to encourage location filming, period, anywhere in the state of California. I would love to see them give incentives to specific counties, each county throughout the state, to draw more of that business back into California, to incentivize people to come and remember what we have here. Because you literally can be anywhere in the world, in California itself. And so I would love to see them.
You can be almost anywhere in the world, in Los Angeles County.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And then if you expand it statewide, you truly can be absolutely anywhere in the world. So I would love to see the incentive look at bringing more of that back, and maybe looking at that specifically.
So you'd mentioned the other kind of key driver was the streaming, the online services. So Netflix this year is spending $8 billion on original content. They have more than $20 billion in debt and obligations. So are we seeing something of a production bubble? Is this sustainable? Is this likely to be something that's not going to be around in a few years? What are your thoughts on that?
Right now, we've got them lined up at the gate trying to get into film, and it's been like that for probably the last 3 or 4 months, and we see that for the next 2 or 3 months already on the books, trying to position themselves. So not that that's years down the road,
Right.
but as far as this being a banner year, and Evan's a testament to how, if you saw the chart from here to here over the years since they even started in the film business, we were filming before we were annexed into the city, but I'm sure it's incrementally every year. And then it was probably the day that they put the incentives in California that just went zoom.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely over the last 3-4 years. I mean, we've seen much higher numbers. We've averaged, just in the city, and all we permit is for location filming, so that doesn't
Right.
include what's on the sound stages that are certified. But we've had over 400 or 500 permits consistently every year for the last 4 years. We just finished up another strong fiscal year, and that's led to averaging around 1,300 film days.
Mm-hmm.
So those numbers, yeah, definitely have spiked in the last few years that the California Film Incentive's been in place.
And all signs are that those trends are going to continue for as far as is foreseeable.
It's looking good, and I think, again, I've read the same articles, lately
Yeah.
about what Netflix is spending, and Reed Hastings trying to, of course, assure the shareholders that this is all good news, that it just means they're growing. And I think, in a way, I do like to take the optimistic approach that they, right now, because of the way the trends of consuming content have changed, and my kids, don't even care what the TV does. It's
Yeah.
all online.
That's right.
They know what Amazon is
Mhm.
spending, and they're trying to remain a key player as the market continues to evolve and how people, again, watch the shows. And so I think they're trying to, again, stay ahead of it and
Yeah.
keep producing this content. They've got a very low cancellation rate they will always cite compared to network shows. We see it all the time. They spend millions and millions of dollars a lot of times on network pilots, and they never even see the light of day. Or if they do, they're canceled within 3 episodes. Whereas maybe Netflix, they're spending a lot of money right now, but it seems like these shows all get completed. They all go on, and the kids and everybody
And through
else
whatever
is
algorithm
consuming
they
it.
have, people are
Mhm.
looking at it.
I think that one of the differences between Netflix and some of the networks is when Netflix is producing a show, they're guaranteeing that it's airing because they're producing it from themselves.
Right.
So they're going
They're not
to
trying
get
to sell it to
some
anybody.
sort of
Yeah.
right. They don't have to produce it to sell it. So they have an instant return to some degree on the money that they've spent for their
Mhm.
content.
And
And I think that is unique to them.
unlike a network that is limited to a certain number of hours of broadcast time.
Correct.
It's-
Or an independent production company producing a show that they would like to sell to a network,
Mhm.
something like that. So I also, from my own observation, I've noticed that Netflix is being very creative in their content, and they have really
Yeah.
broadened their spectrum of genres and the audiences that they're going after, even foreign market.
Mhm.
So I don't think that Netflix is going anywhere anytime soon.
Mhm.
I think that they are visionary and they are looking forward.
How long have they been doing this, though? I mean, really, Netflix and Amazon, it just seemed like they just showed up a few years ago.
Well, I think
Maybe
they've been around
a
longer
long
than we
time.
think that they have, and they've just now become an actual substantial player in the game.
Yeah, in terms
Because
of measure-
it's something new for us, excuse me, but we got Netflix and Amazon renting out production locations
Yes.
for us,
Absolutely.
where we didn't see them 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You never heard of them. So in the last couple of years, all of a sudden, we've got these big productions, and they're not afraid to spend some serious dough. You probably know more about it than we do, but they're out there, and where it's this market that was never there before. So it's a nice tuck in.
It is, and it was also a very nice stabilizing of our market locally while we were waiting for everyone to come home.
Mhm.
And now we're seeing both, and it's nice.
Yeah, and there really aren't any seasons anymore. There aren't.
Right.
There's not a busy season for us at all. It's just there's production all the time, and it's sometimes it's network and the online services are pretty steady. But I think people also get in the habit with low costs, relatively speaking, for Netflix and Amazon and the other services of. Once you get hooked into a show, there's no way that you're going to get rid of it.
Mhm.
The same reason that people, I'm sure, subscribe to HBO periodically to catch up with Game of Thrones or something like that. But, constantly feeding that with programming is just, it's a behavioral pattern, I think, that we'll see for a while.
You mentioned the change in how we watch things from what used to be the big screen or the TV screen to every kind of device. It just, from what you've observed, how is that changing the way stories are told or the kinds of stories that are told?
I think now that the 10-episode season is kind of the order of the day for the online and the cable,
I agree.
most of the cable outlets, that I think, I was just talking about this today, that I think it's easier to digest. Again, in the world of binge watching and you want to
Mhm.
get through a whole season, Amazon and Netflix, they're waiting until all 10 episodes are done before they release, because they know, again, that's how
That
people
is
are watching it.
Mhm.
And I think that the storytelling then can be obviously altered and catering to that, how it's ultimately viewed. I think it's been very interesting to see, and you get sucked in and you start watching the stuff and you just go from one episode to another. It's crazy.
It is, and that's a perfect example of what I mean by Netflix is looking forward, because this is the instant gratification generation that we have coming up. We are all that way these days. And so the idea that we can steal a day and binge watch our show is very appealing, and it's working because everyone is gravitating to that kind of content viewing.
Was it House of Cards was the first when they first did
Yes,
that? And everyone
yes.
said they're crazy.
Yes.
What do you mean you're releasing the whole season at once?
And that was a production that Kevin Spacey couldn't get done anywhere else.
Right.
Mhm.
So they gave him carte blanche, and he was able to do what he wanted. And I think that's a little bit of that, how story ideas change a little bit, is because Netflix is attractive, or Amazon and those services, to a lot of the creative types, because they can go their own direction on things, and they don't or they don't have to be fall into certain paradigms with their stories. So I think you see some unique series and storylines coming up because of that.
Let me change the subject to starting with you, Steve. What drew you to this business? Why do you do what you do?
Well, why do we do what we do?
Just you. You don't have to speak for the entire industry.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, myself, I live on 200 acres,
Mhm.
and next door to me, I by the way, I started with 5. Somebody could go the whole story, because I'll briefly tell you. I
The short
started
version.
in the disposal business out here and was very successful. I started with 5 acres, and as my business grew, I ended up with 200. Okay, that's the ranch that we're filming at. Next door, they've been filming since the 60s, probably even earlier. So my son, at 12 years old, because he came from a farm, knows how to drive equipment, backhoes and tractors. So they hired him next door to work on equipment and backhoes and tractors, and one thing led to the other, where he's now in the middle of production. And so then they started coming over on our side, and little by little it grew, until finally my son was like, now 18, let's go into business. So we've been, and he's been very successful with it.
How long ago was that?
Well, he's 30.
12 years.
So, and probably been filming there for 20 years, because they would film on our ranch, but usually just come in, film, and with little or no representation. And then we got the hang of things. And then when we annexed into the city and became into the movie ranch overlay zone, then we were really legitimate. And I'm not sure what year that was.
Yeah, it was about
10 years ago.
2015, yeah.
So the movie ranch overlay zone means that even if it's not a soundstage, it still qualifies for city credits and also state credits?
Well, it used to be just sound stages that were eligible for the film incentive program, I believe. So now the movie ranches are allowed in there as well. So that's in the last year. But the movie ranch overlay zone, it's a planning designation from the city that allows certain uses to take place on movie ranches that don't require as much notification because it's an accepted use.
I got 2 helicopters over there right now. Big helicopters. You're not landing those at all the other kids' homes. So, and we're also surrounded by the National Forest, and between me and the neighbor, we got about 650 acres that we can do all these
So you
things.
can blow things up and not bother
and we
anybody.
do.
Yeah.
And we blow things up, and we build huge sets. This and this. Talking of Netflix, we have the Beastmaster there, which is huge. I don't know if you know about that with Sylvester Stallone, but it's a gigantic set, and so it's been growing, and now I hardly knew what to say over here, because my son's been running it so often. So I took some notes just to keep up.
Evan, how'd you get into this?
Well, I've worked for the city for almost 20 years, and I've spent a lot of time in communications. I have a background in television production or video production. So I've always worked in communications very closely with the film side. So, I was very well versed in what we were doing, but then, an opportunity came up, and I've been enjoying it for the last few years.
Karen, how'd you get into this?
I kind of fell into
What
it.
attracted you to this
I came
business
down
show?
to Southern California to go to college
Mhm.
and had a friend who was in the industry, and had always had a fascination with it. And so just because I was fortunate to have that exposure and to actually learn about the business, I realized quickly that it was my dream job. It was my dream profession. And so I haven't really done anything else in my life. I started in this business when I was 22.
Okay.
My brother was a location manager on the great old show Murder, She Wrote. Remember that with
Mhm,
Angela
sure.
Lansbury? So I would follow him. When he would
Cabot's
go out.
Cove, Maine.
Yep. When I was young, and I was just visiting from Chicago. He had already moved out here, and so I'd follow him around scouting. I was like, this seems like a pretty cool job. He went away and did Terms of Endearment in Lincoln, Nebraska, the Academy Award-winning feature there with Jack Nicholson and Shirley MacLaine. When he returned, it was when I had finally moved out here, and he said, I really don't want to travel anymore. He had relocated right behind Granary Square, up here in Santa Clarita from the Hollywood Hills, and he said, I want to start a company, my own company called Hollywood Locations. Would you like to join me? And so we've become business partners, and it's hard to believe it's been about 30 years now.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. I mean, it's never a dull moment. We can all, talk till the cows come home about the stories, and just last night and this week, and just the drama, literally, of what we go through. It's very exciting. And as my colleague, our other business partner, Ken Johnson, always says, he goes, it's just a little bit crazier than selling insurance, isn't it? You never know quite what's going to happen from day to day. And even though insurance is a big part of our business,
Yeah.
but I was kind of the young buck, as my brother again knew many people in the industry, and obviously had the the creative side. I came in as, do you know what a spreadsheet is? Maybe we should start working with spreadsheets. And did you hear there's this new thing, a desktop computer, that we can use for the contracts? And so I brought a little bit of the youth. We're 15 years apart, and so I think we've complemented each other over the years. I've focused maybe still a little bit more on the business affairs side of the business, and he's continued to be more kind of like the marketing arm and the visionary. And obviously many of the people that he worked with coming up just in the industry are now heads of production, at the major studios. So that's the quick story on me.
You mentioned the spreadsheets. How is technology changing? How has it changed the way you run your business? We'll start at this end.
Well, again, it's funny. You go to the marketing side of things. I remember when we sent out our locations on a CD-ROM. Remember that?
Or they
You
come
had
in
to-
and grab the books.
Right, or the books. It started with books. The guys would take physical pictures, paste them up, and they would come in like a library, come and check out books of your locations.
Mhm.
So that's how it started 30 years ago. Then pretty soon, there's this thing called the desktop computer, and you can actually digitize pictures. Oh my gosh. And we were snail mail, our CD-ROM of our locations.
Mhm.
And then as the bandwidth speeds grew and we were able to start emailing, and now video and everything, I think on the marketing side, we've seen just this obvious immediate response. We put out an e-blast yesterday, and before you know it, people are calling you back that are 3 steps removed. Maybe not even on your list, but it's been forwarded, right?
Mhm.
And so it's helped you get the word out about what you have available incredibly well. That would be my quick, how technology is affecting things.
I agree, and I think that for us, as far as working with production and with our location managers, it has mostly been a tool to speed things up.
Mhm.
Production moves so fast, and the expectation of our location managers is so high that the fastest that we can respond to assist them to make it easier, the better. And technology has helped with that issue tremendously.
So the time frame between
Yes.
when a production is being envisioned into when it's shooting, is that compressed now?
It is yes, it is to a degree. It seems like we're getting calls for requests for things that are coming up much faster because we can do it faster these days. And that, that typical, this doesn't shoot for a week or two, or, that those good old days when you actually had some lead time to do your work. But that's not the case anymore. And I don't know if it is a factor of the changing a type of production like the Netflix. I don't know if it's the cause of that, but being able to respond more quickly with more information has helped tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, from the city side, we have a relatively small office, so we have 3 full-time people that work in our film office. And I mean, technology is essential for us getting permits turned around, and it's, everything's needed yesterday, as Karen said, and it's just the production world. So we have a lot of online resources. They're fantastic, so it allows us to just let people kind of find their own way. So a locations person can go on our website, find all the information they need to do their permit, and give that to us electronically, and that's really how we organize things. So there's really not a whole. We still do in person, and there's still a lot of that, but it's much less than it used to be. And also our film guide. We used to have a film guide that we had to print out, and it was a thing that people hold, and there's still a lot of people that that appreciate those. But we're able to have everything online now. So whether you're from production or you're a resident who wants to list your home or business as a location, we have those resources online.
That's probably the biggest thing is the internet. Just having a website nowadays. I mean, we have people come from Canada to film here, and they come from England. They think they land here, and they think they're in Hollywood, and they don't know that
We
they're
don't
not.
want to disabuse them of that notion.
And they're happy to film here, but it comes from our website, and it comes through the city of Santa Clarita's film office.
Yeah.
Not the side track to that, but the efficiency of their office
Correct.
has single-handedly made our jobs so much more efficient and easy. So let me just tell you, we had a production going on, and 11 o'clock at night, this Mayan, which was trying to be a big deal, like Sons of Anarchy, they want to do something. They don't have a permit. We're not letting them on the property. They want a permit. It's 11 o'clock at night. He's got my son, his Jennifer, on the phone. We're doing this over the phone, and we get the permit. But that's kind of efficiency. Besides that, because we're not in an office, we're remotely. We're out in the forest. We got our phones on. We also have a remote printer. We have a remote computer. So we're signing contracts, getting permits, and all these things out in the national forest. And it's working. So is technology? It's incredible, because in some other era, number one, we'd have to go back to the office.
Wait till City Hall opens.
And then fax machine, which was high tech.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, it's good.
Jennifer would want me to say that that's not usually how we would.
Please
prefer.
don't come to the city at 11:30 at night.
I don't know how she
Hours
did it,
are
but, you know,
posted on
I
her
don't know if I
website.
should even have brought that up, but I was sure proud of her. She pulled it off.
She's
Well,
awesome.
I think that story is a perfect example of the true dedication and the commitment of our city and our city staff to our film industry.
Absolutely.
More and more entertainment's a global business. The Chinese market is, being portrayed as shaping how movies are made, who's even cast. Are we seeing how much of an influence of international participation are we seeing in the Valley?
I mean, in my experience, not enough to really be much of a tick. So, I mean, I know that it's important. I know those are important markets. In Santa Clarita, our bread and butter is episodic television. Tends to be, but not that we haven't had those, because we certainly have. But yeah, I don't think it's a huge part of the market right now.
I don't have a whole lot of experience with it either. I've only had one project that I was aware that where their financing had come from, and that was a little different, the way that they managed their financing, than what we're used to, and so I had to adjust for that. But it wasn't a bad
Little
thing.
variance from generally accepted
was-
accounting principles?
Well,
or-
no, just we have a typical way that we submit our paperwork, and we're accustomed to it
Right.
coming back to us in a certain
And it was a
manner.
little different.
And it was a little different, not bad, not wrong, just different. And so that's the only thing that I've experienced that has been a shift.
No.
Yeah, and on that, with the financing, I think we probably deal with a little bit more of the international customers downtown. They find their way to LA, but maybe
Yes.
don't venture all the way up here. So we have had our share, and one of my favorite stories is when we had a production from India, and they would only pay in cash, and they owed us $20,000. and no one wanted to accept the cash. They said, Pete, you're going to have to accept it and hold it. And my daughter had just been born, and I'm like, okay, send them out to the hospital. Okay, and here I am, I'm counting $20,000 in cash.
In the waiting room.
Yeah, and I'm taking, and then you can't help but be paranoid after you accept 20. Like somebody going to hit me over the head on the way home. So you'll see that with that. A lot of international groups want to pay in cash.
Yes, they do.
For various reasons.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
What are some unsung locations in the Santa Clarita Valley? Where do we find a lot of filming taking place that people might not be familiar with?
You know, we had, the city has thousands of acres of open space. So the city council has made, obtaining open space a priority for some time now. So we're actually still discovering some as the city buys more open space and makes it available for the public. So one of the locations that was used for a second unit camera for Denzel Washington movie that's coming out was on Newhall Pass. So it was pointed towards, from the Newhall Pass where the 5 and the 14 intersect, and pointed towards the valley. And I remember talking to the location manager, and he's like, I can't believe nobody's ever got this before.
It's a
He's
great shot.
never
Yeah.
seen that
No,
before
you're
in
right.
a film.
And that
So-
was just recently added as parkland, right? There was
Yes,
open
so
space,
it's
yeah.
parkland and open space. So that, and it literally closed escrow like a week before they were trying to get that, because they wanted to do some overhead shots of the 14 freeway. So I would say that some of our locations have yet to be discovered, because I mean that location manager was saying once people see this on film, they're going to want to come up here all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think another one that we did in conjunction with the city is where we're at, and directly to our west is East Walker, now burnt to the ground, and one day will be reborn again. But we did, before it burnt, the shooter. So we were working with our Rancho Deluxe, and the city of Santa Clarita on this quite large production. I think they were base camped in ours and filming on our side and their side, and it was really a great cooperation between public and private, but also opened up this filming opportunity to a place that I don't think was ever filmed.
Again, I think up here it is funny. I've been living up here for 30 years, and I ride my bike a lot, and you're always seeing different vistas coming from Chicago, as I told you. I just think, again, I'm still in love with the scenery out here, and I just love that, again, you can put the camera in a lot of different places, just have amazing views and vistas. So I can't pinpoint just one specific one, but I just think there's still an abundance of wonderful locations out here in Santa Clarita, that's for sure.
I agree.
How has the business changed in ways you wish it had not?
Wow. What do you think?
Go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, you want me to go first? I think, again, as we talk about, timing, I think because maybe technology has allowed things to happen quicker, now we're victims of our own success. And then it's just got to be even faster and faster. And our clients, and Karen, you probably, again, when we're representing clients, we get somewhat desensitized to the pace it moves and how crazy it is, and the fact that an agreement more often than not isn't signed until the day or two before. Many corporate clients that we have can't quite groove with that, and they're like, you got to give us at least 2 weeks notice. And I'm sure, Karen, we have to explain very carefully that if you want to be in this business, you've got to learn to adapt, because there's actor availability, there's other locations they're waiting to, to see how the puzzle's all going to work, and it's almost, especially with television, not until a handful of days before, until you really know, is it really going to happen? Are they going to sign the contract? And so that's a thing that's difficult. It's difficult when we're in the middle trying to understand both the needs of production, moving at the speed of light, but also trying to make a more corporate-minded client comfortable, that just, and it's the fear of the unknown.
Correct.
When you're throwing all these things at them, okay, it'll be about a crew of 80, 100, background 50, and we're throwing out all our vernacular, and they freeze up, and I think that's the toughest thing, that trying to be that bridge between sometimes very, very different mindsets is what I would say.
That is 100% accurate. I absolutely agree. I think that it is because the movie industry, a production company, is such a gigantic monster, or it can at least feel that way, that it can be very overwhelming for someone. And I think that I will do the shameless plug. I think that is why companies like mine and Pete's and locations like Steve's are so important, because you have hands-on professionals that know exactly what to do
It's not your
for
first
both
rodeo.
worlds.
Right.
Yes. So, and it's important that you absolutely can work with great location managers and great production companies entirely on your own. But there's also an asset with having a professional like the four of us sitting here that can guide you on what to do and how to do it, and take away a lot of that unknown that comes from the pace and the hubbub of a production company and all of those people. So I agree with you that it is the pace of the industry has changed substantially.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that, especially from a permitting aspect. As the expectations are often, because we got it done last time with very little notice, that we can do that all the time, and we do everything we
That
can.
becomes the new normal.
Yeah, but to Karen's point too, that the locations community and the infrastructure that we have in Santa Clarita, I think, is very close knit. I think everybody's very supportive of each other. You hear oftentimes one studio referring people to another because they can't accommodate, or the same with movie ranches. Part of that, I think, just makes us, because of that spirit, good hosts for productions in general. With technology in specific, I'll give you a very specific example. Drones in the permitting world have kind of flipped the table over a little bit, because there's FAA rules. There's a lot of guidance. It's extra insurance, and who doesn't want a beautiful drone shot? So those have been a little bit of a challenge for us. I mean, we in our film office follow the lead from the California Film Commission, but those can be sticky because they're great looking shots. We all agree, but you have to make sure that everything's done properly.
What was the original question?
How has the business changed in ways you wish it had not?
Well, I don't think that I wish that it had not, because we, as owner-operators, and I think we all have this, we changed with it, and we're changing, and we're constantly changing. So we expect it to change. As a matter of fact, because of that, we are continuing to make filming opportunities that they show up in film, so I can't say that it has for us, because we've adapted to it, and the speed of which the city can do permits isn't like the old. I mean, it's even more efficient than ever before. And then having it on my phone and having a contract that we can read right out there in the dirt lot and sign actually with my finger out there.
Yeah.
So
How has filming here changed or matured in the time you've been working out here?
how is it what?
Changed or matured, or how has the business grown?
These guys show up with $20 million worth of stuff in our backyard. There's probably $40 million today. We got the 2 helicopters. So it is the amount of money these guys are spending. And I'll tell you, it has a lot to do with this incentive thing. And it also has a lot to do with our movie ranch overlay. When we didn't have the overlay, we weren't sure if we were going to be there tomorrow, because then you needed a conditional use permit. And we weren't sure if we were going to have that going forward. But once we came into the overlay zone, which is a zoning ordinance that we could actually have a couple of helicopters and fire fully automatic weapons and blow up a house, that they know that they can come in over here and spend a whole bunch of money to do these great effects, that they're not going to get shut down, and they can shoot for 36 hours straight. Nobody's going to say anything. And so that's where I've seen it. It's just
So the scale is...
it's just blowing up, and I think it's going to continue as long as the state continues to give the incentive. If they want to give more, they'll just see more of it, and it's coming back fast.
I think that for me, I've seen every change that you can imagine, and I think that Pete will agree from the time that we have both been out here, and you much longer than I have. But I started in the industry right around the time that the city was forming the city film office.
Mm-hmm.
And so back then, we were a destination location. We were not the place to start.
Mhm.
And I think that over time in my career, we have now become the place to start, or one of the places that you start and go from there. And that's production-wise. I think that community-wise, from my experience, I think that not only is the community a bedroom community still for our industry, I think that the city itself, or the community, is really embracing and now is part of the actual industry that we
Mhm.
have out here. I regularly get calls from our clients, our residential or business clients, saying, hey, I'm still here, I want filming.
Mhm.
And that is a big shift, is that we now have active locations and property and businesses owners out here that are actively seeking
So for
production.
whom it's a regular part of their
Exactly.
routine. Mhm.
And I think that that lends to more of that widespread benefit of these incentives that the state has brought back, because we're not just seeing the money coming into the production companies so they can film here. That money goes to everyone when they're in the community filming. It goes to the other business owners utilizing services. And Evan can speak much more to that than I can, but from my own experience, I see a lot of that money being spread to our local residents, which ultimately benefits everyone here.
I think to echo what Karen said about the localization of the permit office, I think again, wasn't it? It was done through Film LA. I've got their little quarterly report. Wasn't Film LA the permitting body for Santa
Ultimately,
Clarita?
originally,
Their
Right,
yes.
predecessors.
and then when it was more localized here,
Mhm.
and people that really lived here and knew the community, and just like anything, to be handled more directly and in close proximity was huge. So that's been a great benefit. And then I also think, again, as you know, I work obviously both up here and live up
Mhm.
here 5 minutes from the Avenue Scott stages, but go almost every day to downtown LA, where we have Los Angeles Center Studios and we have the bulk of our locations that we represent. Have you been to downtown LA lately, guys? I mean, it's been exploding
It's
as
crazy.
far as the development, the residential boom. Metro's got streets closed because of the new regional connector. Because of all that, it's obviously gotten more challenging in the central city. And so what happens then? Can we push farther out? Santa Clarita is obviously one of the first places that they say, can we make that, that one scene work a little bit, farther north, where we have more room to spread out. We don't have to deal with the street closures.
Mhm.
Surface lots, the lack of just surface parking in downtown
Yes.
Los Angeles
Mhm.
has definitely shrunk. So that's what I've witnessed, obviously in a huge manner, seeing both sides of it almost on a daily basis. It's just easier to work up here from those logistical standpoints.
You had mentioned that episodic television is the largest section or segment of what we do here. Is that our specialty? I mean, do we have a specialty, or is this represents pretty much the spectrum of filmed
it's-
entertainment?
Yeah, it's certainly I think the largest segment of our production, but I wouldn't say that we have a specialty. We do plenty of commercials. Every year it seems there's at least a few Super Bowl commercials that
Mhm.
are done out here. We have big features too. Oprah Winfrey's A Wrinkle in Time just finished shooting out here, and it doesn't get much bigger than that. I think they're the biggest recipient of the California Film Incentive
Mhm.
Program to date. So yeah, I don't think we have a specialty, but one of our specialty, I think, is adaptability. I mean, we have so many different looks, from older neighborhoods to new neighborhoods that can be America Anywhere to open space. We have, I mean, it's the one thing that you can't fake. In some ways, I guess you can a little bit, but we have open space and we're surrounded by it. Yeah, I would say just adaptability, and it allows. And that's why locally based filming is such a big deal for us, because productions that are based in a soundstage can go out and they can get 2 or 3 different locations within 15, 20 minutes of their stages.
Mm-hmm.
It saves them a ton of money, it saves them time, and the end result on camera looks great.
Who inspires you?
Who inspires me?
Yes.
I think again, as we see the maverick entrepreneurs, and you see in the news these days of what Jeff Bezos and Amazon has been able to do and how they've grown. That's that's pretty inspirational to see those stories still occurring,
Mhm.
you know, in America in the 21st century.
Mhm.
And Google, I'm proud that we, as much as we allude to overseas, and there's a lot of talk about, you know, internationally what's going on, I'm proud of our American entrepreneurs and great, you know, companies that have grown and are still kind of at the forefront of technology and have become customers of ours now on the content side. That's pretty inspirational.
Mhm.
You know, I would say business wise that the leaders in our industry who have fought to bring business back to us, the executives that know how important family and quality of life is for the people that are professionals in our industry, and all of the work that has been done to bring those families home, to bring that business home back to our state. Those people make me want to keep doing the best that I can to keep it here as well.
It's an easy question for me, who inspires me, because it's my staff and those that, you know, built up the film office. It's a challenging job beyond belief sometimes, working in permitting and balancing the needs of production with the residents. I mean, our job is to protect this community, but it's also to you know, to embrace filming because of the great benefit that it brings. So, you know, seeing how much each of them care, like Steve mentioned Jennifer on the phone at 11 o'clock. I mean, those aren't typical government stories, right? So seeing how much it means to all of them, you know, Kelly and Kayla and Jennifer, yeah, they inspire me because they have a high expectation. So I need to live up to that.
Well, what inspires me is my son Steve Jr., because I wouldn't be in this business if he didn't have the enthusiasm that he has and the drive. And when he's running 3 shows at one time, and he has been up for 20 hours, but his energy and enthusiasm is contagious, and he's doing these contracts, and you know these contracts, they're not easy, they're very complicated, dealing with ABC or whatever, and being able to understand that, yet correct them, but yet and be on the phone with 3 attorneys. That's where my inspiration's coming from, and it's pretty exciting, and the future is very bright with him because he's hard charging and he's got them lined up out the door. So that's my inspiration.
So if filming dried up here, what would be the economic impact? I mean, the direct cost, I think the number is about $30 million.
That's just for location
just-
filming. So
Right.
that's our
So that's
estimated.
just a
Yeah.
small piece of the whole.
Yeah, and certainly there's direct revenue too, but yeah, I mean, it's the benefit of filming is, you know, it's homeowners that can rent their home for filming purposes. It's the businesses. I mean, there's probably a handful of businesses throughout, you know, the last few years that, who knows, if filming didn't take place there, they might not be able to, you know, exist because of difficult times sometimes. So that's a huge thing, but it's also the hardware store, it's the grocery store, it's the gas. You know, there's so many people, when we look at the money that's spent out here, it's also people that work out here, and that's an important thing to remember. We did a study years ago, and it stated there was about 6,000 people that work in the industry, you know, and I think that number is very low because we've since annexed and where population grows, and that was just for the city. So, you know, we go on set, when we go on set and they find out we're from the Santa Clarita Film Office, you always run into people that are like, oh, I'm so glad I get to, you know, have a production up here. I live around the corner. I
Right.
get to see my kids, and I
Right.
get to, you know, and those people that come up here and spend money and are able to do all that are great for the local economy.
I 100% agree with him. I think that if filming dried up, period, that it would be instantly devastating and easy to see in our community between not just the paychecks of the people who live here, but the money that production spends across the board.
Yeah, I have probably a good 4 or 5 friends that over the last 5-10 years have had to move away. You know, they just, they're more in the feature world, and they're very well known and respected in the feature world, and if they want to keep working and earning the dollars that they're used to, they've had to travel almost constantly, or finally just say, forget it, we got to sell the house, we got to move. And I think they do that usually begrudgingly, and they have to do what they have to do to follow the business and what their livelihood is. So yeah, that would be devastating again as you get to all the other ripple effects then economically, what it does to the housing market and just all the other, you know, things that would be affected.
And there are many small businesses that are film related support businesses that don't get counted in those numbers. Businesses like Pete and myself, the work that we do with our location with the location services, those numbers aren't counted in the manner that everybody else keeps track of that stuff. So, and I know what my business does, he knows what his business does, and if that business dries up, that money's gone, this money's gone, that money's gone, his job's gone.
Last question. Just looking at what you've got on your plate right now, what are you excited about in the near term?
Well, again, I think there's just a lot of production in the pipeline. I had a great conversation with a fellow producer who lives in Stevenson Ranch, who I first met working down at Los Angeles Center Studios, and would love to obviously work, closer to home as we both. I think I saw him at the Carousel Ranch fundraiser a year ago, and we talked about some things, and it was neat to again just be able to think about what he's got in the pipeline. He's on a show right now, and he's already lining up the next one, and that's kind of where we're at right now. And it's nice to just have that climate as opposed to not knowing where your next deal is going to come from, because you're hearing everything is going to Atlanta or Chicago or New York or Canada or wherever. So it just feels good that it seems like the wheel is turning very well right now, and we obviously hope it's going to continue.
I agree. I think that there's been a big shift in just the feeling or the climate of the industry as a whole, and it feels like there's maybe a little bit of an exhale that finally something's changed, and I'm starting to see location managers that I did a lot of work with throughout the years who have had no choice but to go work in Atlanta. I'm starting to see those managers come home and come back to California on a regular basis, and several of them have said to me, "No, I'm done. I'm not going back. There's enough work here now." So.
Yeah, I'm excited for what's next. I mean, it's been invigorating to see production return and seeing the whole production community just embrace it so much. And it's a huge sigh of relief, but it's this joyous, reflection on it. I think, and you see it all over. But what's next? I mean, we've had so many great shows coming out. That's what always is fascinating to me.
So a big change from 3 or 4 years ago.
Big
Is there
change.
anything else that you'd want the business community in our valley to hear from you that we haven't touched on?
I think, again, as Karen alluded to, we're a much more welcoming community. I have an old rule of thumb, the farther you go from the epicenter of Hollywood or Los Angeles, the more welcoming people usually are. But I think reiterating that this is a very important industry, and although every now and then you may be inconvenienced by a lane closure, a street closure, or your favorite restaurant is locked up for the night because somebody's come to film there, to remember the big picture, that there are a lot of people and a lot of families and homes and households that rely on this industry, and so to just have that patience, with production when you come upon it. And I know it's easier for us, those in the industry that are in there, but those that aren't, to kind of remember that we're all in this together, and to just try and be as understanding as possible that we need this economic engine to keep humming strongly, and to try and do the best they can to go with the flow.
And I would simply add to that by saying that if we can just remember that when they're here with us, they're actually contributing to the infrastructure of our community. And we love, the community is beautiful, and they are part of the reason why that we have the benefits that we have in our community.
Yeah, and I would say, from our perspective, is the reason we're able to do what we do as city staff, just from a city side of things, is from the support of the council. I mean, they're the ones that have hired the bodies and able to do this. They didn't have to. Some cities don't have that much manpower. They've made it a priority. It's one of our 4 targeted sectors because of the wealth that it brings into the city. But the support of the city, they also supported the Film Incentive Program, which allows us to help entice productions to come back. So I think that focus and leadership from the council and upper city management of supporting that allows us to do what we can do, and it facilitates and it adds to Santa Clarita's reputation, which we all collectively do, I think, as being a great place to film.
I think I have to echo what Evan said, that if it wasn't for the city of Santa Clarita embracing the industry, because we were doing good, we were fine, But when we annexed into the city and the city oversees our permit process and oversees our future, which I'm happy that they do because it's very well organized and it's so efficient. So number one, with the city and the council to embrace it in this community because of the amount of jobs, but when those people roll into the backyard in our location and in our base camp at 3:30 in the morning, and they live out here, and they're so happy to have a job out here, and they're paying house payments and buying a car and all these things. I mean, it really is, and we've all said it, this big trickle effect economically, and the people that don't have to go to New Orleans again are just elated, and I think it's huge, and it's been a real boon for us as business owners, and as obviously for the community and the state of California.
On that note, thank you.